Good morning, everybody. Welcome to an early edition of the weekend wrap up here on Friday. Josh, I know you've got some events tomorrow taking place. You can't do our regularly scheduled show, so we bounced this thing up.
We moved it up a day.
You moved it up a day, and I know that's caught a lot of people off guard, but we appreciate you tuning in. For those of you that have, before we dive into this week's news that matters, let's hear a word from our sponsor, Dennis Young Insurance.
Get the results you want with the personalized service you deserve at Dennis Young Insurance Agency.
As a local independent agency, we offer coverage from several different companies, including Erie. So whether it's auto, home, life, personal, or business, we can find the right coverage to meet your unique insurance needs. And with a rate lock advantage, your rates won't go up as long as you do not change drivers, autos, or addresses. Contact us at Dennis Young Insurance Agency, insuring Shelbyville and surrounding areas since 1988.
All righty. Again, we want to thank our sponsor, Dennis Young Insurance, for sponsoring the weekend wrap up here on Shelbyville Now. Josh, not too many things going on this week, but something big happened last night. Something big.
Something did happen last night. We'll get there.
I know, but I'm going to talk about this real
Okay,
quick
you want to jump
first.
in early. That's fine.
Everybody, Josh Blevins was officially sworn in last night as a city council for Ward 5 in the city of Shelbyville.
Ward 5, yep.
And Betsy Noel was in for Ward 3.
Ward 3, yeah.
And Henry Feldhouse, incumbent, was also sworn in. So three new terms started last night.
New term city council.
Two new folks.
Yeah.
Two new faces. And, boy, y'all hit the ground running. We'll get to that later.
We'll get to that, yeah. And before we get too deep as well, we're going to be several octaves lower today. I'm sick as can be, and sorry about my voice. It's all I can do. So,
all right, well,
we're here pushing through anyway.
Right,
so we're here pushing through.
All right, give us a rundown on what's happening.
Yeah, let's start with last weekend when we left you. We were about to go and do a parade, and I just really wanted to recap that for thanks to everybody that tuned in and watched the parade with us. And you may or may not have noticed, if you watched it, you did notice, we dropped out a couple times. It was just, one of those things, we had the perfect hardwired internet, and it still went down. The entire fiber connection went down for about 15 minutes. We used Verizon for a little bit, but we're able to get it back up by the end of the parade. And just thanks for everybody tuned in. Thanks for our hosts that came out and hosted that.
Fantastic
job. They
did
a great job. The weather was perfect. The turnout was huge.
Yes.
The parade was as long as it's been and forever, I heard. So,
And also, we want to thank our sponsor again for allowing that to take place. Lowry Jewelers, Billy and Sharon Lowry. They're having their retirement sale going on, and this is kind of a celebration for them as they retire, and they wanted to give something to the community. And if you are still out running around Christmas shopping, which it's just the 13th, there's still a few days left. They're going to be open, and their sale will run till January the 4th.
Yep.
They'll be announcing that real soon, but I was going to go ahead. I asked Billy this morning if I could share that.
Yeah.
January 4th will be their last day of the sale. And at that point, they will officially retire.
They will be retired.
Yeah.
So they'll enjoy it, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
But getting into what did happen this week, we're getting into the holidays, things slowing down a little bit, but we did still have a couple big meetings this week. Tuesday evening, we had the monthly county commission meeting. Couple items on the agenda of note. They abolished the road board, which we knew this was coming. We had just had several elections this year where they tried to, they didn't even have anybody volunteer to be on the ballot. So, but everybody kind of knew this was going away. The road board had kind of outlived its usefulness. We have an elected road superintendent. He kind of oversees all that with the county commission. So the road board is gone. There was supposed to be action on new fire codes and building codes for the county. And they decided that there were some questions and some wording that weren't right. So they deferred those. One got deferred 90 days, one 30 days. So that'll be coming back up down the pike. And then the big thing that happened, which we knew was coming, there was a vote on the county commission bylaws. And at the 11th hour, there was a move by Commissioner Greg Vick, brought up an amendment, and he struck the language, one of the things that had been a lot of back and forth, which is every year, the road superintendent and the 911 board get together and they have the list of the road names.
Right.
And those get voted on every year by the county commission. traditionally, going back as far as anybody that's on the commission now can remember, that list was given to the Rules Committee just to be put on the agenda, just as kind of a, just as a step. They didn't vote on it. They didn't do anything. They just put it on the agenda. Last year, they bypassed the Rules Committee and ran it through Finance. That upset some people on the Rules Committee. So they wanted to get in the bylaws that you had to run it through the Rules Committee to get it there.
What's the Finance Committee got to do with naming of roads?
They don't have anything to do with the naming of the roads, but the road superintendent happens to, by law, sit on that committee. So he was already on that committee. And that committee also meets a week later than the other committees. So there was a time crunch last year. So they were able to get it through that committee and onto the agenda. But at the end of the day, what ended up happening, they struck all that language out of the bylaws. So the road superintendent does not need to send his road list anywhere, but it's going to go directly on the county commission. I spoke to Mark Clinton afterwards. He actually approached me because he knew we'd be talking about him. And he wanted to make clear that during the meeting, one of the commissioners mentioned that this was a childish back and forth. And it's really a minute detail that's not, at the end of the day, it's not that important of a thing. But he did want to point out that his feeling, and also some of the other commissioners, were the state law is that the road superintendent doesn't report to anybody. He's elected. He reports to the people. They can vote him out of office if they don't like what he's doing. So he feels like by law, he's in the right here. And I don't know that there's anything. And again, this is like, does the paper go here or the paper go there?
Right.
Yeah. Nobody in the county is this really affecting their day-to-day lives, as far as I can tell. So that's kind of where they ended up with that. Other thing that was on their agenda that also was on the city agenda, we'll talk about in a minute. The county approved $5,000 to the Community Foundation 5K. The David Thomas will not be running in May.
Not be
but
running.
May or may not have a mayor's challenge to see how fast the mayors are, and if one can.
Yes, that would be good.
That would be exciting.
That would be good.
Could we wager on that? Isn't sports betting legal in Tennessee now? Maybe we could bet on the mayors, and
I don't know.
We could probably do that as some kind of fundraiser.
Yeah, we could do that. We could do that.
Yeah, I'd like to see the mayors racing.
All would be donations.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it'd go to a good cause. Everything's going to education.
Yeah.
So. And that was about it at the county commission meeting. Nothing else really crazy. It was kind of a short meeting. I believe it went 25 minutes, maybe. Not a crazy meeting. So, and then Thursday night, which you were talking about earlier, we had our city council meeting, and that's where the monthly city business happens. We started with the current city council had to finish the old business that was left over from last month, which is second readings and public hearings and all that. All of those items had already passed a first reading. They unanimously passed second reading. There's nothing controversial. Right. They were done in about 20 minutes. We had the swearing in, which if you watched it, even the judge mentioned the oath they have us do. It's long.
It is long.
A lot of words. Hard.
And he asked you if you had it memorized.
No, I told him I did not have it.
I know, but I think you might have.
No, I just had heard it 3 times by the time it got to me. But it was, that thing went on and on. Even the judge said, I didn't have to swear to this many things to become a judge. So. But we're all legally sworn in now. So now is probably where I should make my disclaimer. Anything I say on the show is my personal opinion and has nothing to do with the city. So just so people know that. So even though I am a council member now, we then, the mayor, first we voted on the vice mayor and the power board member, and William Christie, who has held both those positions, was unanimously put back on in those spots. And then the mayor picks all the remaining boards. And man, there's a ton of city boards.
Yeah, I didn't know we had that many.
Yeah, it was like 15 or more. So I personally had requested, and the one that was important to me, I got on the planning commission, which is, one of the things I focus on. And then I also got on, which I know nothing about, and I guess we'll find out about the railroad board.
Right.
I don't know how often they meet. Do I get free train rides? I don't know what comes up with that. And then there's a bid committee, which is an interesting one, which I hadn't asked for, but I got put on. And that one is anything the city puts out for bid, the bid committee comes together and reviews the bids and picks which bid is presented to the city council to be voted on. And maybe by being on that committee, maybe we'll get a little more insight on how that works with bids and that, and, it'll be something to talk about down the road.
Right.
Because as we found out at this meeting, there was something that we voted on. The parking lot at the Fly which had gone through that bid committee. And even though that's a big project, we tried to get bids. We only had two companies, bid on that. And you'd rather obviously get more bids on stuff. So I don't know.
I think the method, and this is just my opinion, I think the method by which we put out those notices should be probably reevaluated as to how much exposure it gets.
Right.
Because a lot of these companies, they'll go online. Maybe the city has a spot where they put that out.
Yeah.
And maybe they need to put out something on social media that, hey, we've got a bid coming up or whatever. But I think that there's a lot of different methods that have evolved in the last 15 years for communicating that's not being utilized to its fullest extent.
Yeah, and I don't know all that yet. I've seen the county's bid side. I don't know how many different ways the city puts out, but hopefully I'll find out more of that being on that committee. And we'll
because the more bids for the city, the more bids we have, the better we are.
The better your chance of getting, a lower bid or a better bid. So the big thing that was on the agenda that we had talked about last week that we had 3 rezonings, which were all increases in density. The first one, which was the one on Archery Lane, had come in unfavorable, and it was a unanimous no. So that one's killed.
There were a lot of issues with that property.
A lot of issues with that property. The second one, which is the one that's now been on some kind of agenda going all the way back to May, and we're now in December, is this property on Barksdale Lane with Dorrance Street. And I had done my research, and I was prepared if I needed to vote on it, last night. But it turned out that Councilmember Ewing, which it's in her ward, she still has questions, and she didn't feel comfortable bringing it to a vote yet, I was fine with that. So we unanimously voted. We just deferred it till January. So we'll talk about it again.
It's not going back to the commission. It's
going back. Yeah, she didn't want to do the ping pong thing anymore.
Looking for clarification on something.
Yeah, she just said she's still got more questions. We'll have another study session. January 2nd actually is our study session. So we'll get to discuss it there again. The planning director will be there. I would imagine the developer will come to that meeting because it's his project. He can speak on it. And even though I was ready to give a decision last night, if I needed to, now that gives me more time. I can go back and look at it. And, I still have the option of voting whichever way, depending on what happens in the next month.
Right.
So, and then the final item, which was actually in my ward, this was a rezoning on Dover Street.
Right.
It had come to us with a split vote from planning. But as we talked about a little bit last week, I went out and drove around. I visited all 3 of these sites and looked at them. I did my paperwork research, and I couldn't find anything that really bothered me about that one. We didn't have any neighbors that spoke up, and it was affecting any neighbors in a negative way. All it was it was still a single family. It was from an R1 to an R2. So it still didn't allow them to put in a high density development. It just allowed them to put
smaller
in a few
lot
more
sizes.
Smaller lots, but still single family homes in a neighborhood that already has single family. So there wasn't anything to me that was controversial. So I voted yes, and as did everybody else on the council. So it passed. So that's where those 3 went. We had the grant for the TACAN radios, which we've talked about a couple of weeks in a row, and that passed unanimously. So the city fire department now will apply for that grant. If they get the grant money, then they will get on this TACAN radio system.
Right.
And the city will pay 10% and the state will pay 90%. And then finally, which also happened at the county, we also approved the $5,000 to the Community Foundation 5K. So both the city and the county, kind of like we did with the Christmas thing, we've gone in even on this event. So we'll have, as was announced this week, the Christmas event is now going to become an annual, which we knew it. I think everybody kind of thought it would. So that'll be an annual event. And then the plan is to have this 5K on, I think it falls on Mother's Day weekend, every kind of the beginning of summer. So that gives us kind of 2 bookend events on the square that the city and the county work together on, as the square continues to develop and get nicer.
Right.
So we've got some big things going on there.
Those kumbaya moments.
Yeah, in between the other things that are still hanging over our heads. So, but other than that, and I mean, honestly, I went to a lot of things this week, as happens every week. I'll just mention real quick. Monday, the city had they have an annual employee appreciation thing at the Blue Ribbon Club at the celebration here, and I didn't know how many city employees we have. Man, it's a full room. We've got it, and it was great. They recognize everybody that's been there years of service. They had a group of people that have been there 5 years and 10 years and 50. Man, the 25-year one was big. There's a bunch of city employees that worked for us for 25 years. And then we even have one, I think it was Lori, that's been there 30 years this year. So, yeah, we've got a lot of city employees that have been with us a long time, and just, thanks to them for all the work that they do. So a lot of that happens behind the scenes.
Sure.
And as we know, city government doesn't pay that well. So, a lot of these people, it's more of a service. I realize it's a job and they are getting paid, but they could probably go out in the private sector and make more money.
Sure.
So, yeah, we appreciate all their work. So, and with that, also because my voice continues to fall off, that's all I got on last week. So I think maybe, unless you got something, we'll hear from our sponsor. And there's actually a lot coming up in the coming week. And we'll talk about that.
We'll be right back.
Get the results you want with the personalized service you deserve at Dennis Young Insurance Agency.
As a local independent agency, we offer coverage from several different companies, including Erie. So whether it's auto, home, life, personal, or business, we can find the right coverage to meet your unique insurance needs. And with a rate lock advantage, your rates won't go up as long as you do not change drivers, autos, or addresses. Contact us at Dennis Young Insurance Agency, insuring Shelbyville and surrounding areas since 1988.
All right, welcome back to the weekend wrap-up, a day early.
A day early.
It's pre-weekend wrap-up.
It's pre-weekend.
But this is kind of sort of the weekend.
It's Friday. We're going to call this the weekend.
All right, Josh, what we got coming up this week?
I have got, personally, a very busy week coming up. I checked my calendar, and in the first 4 days of the week, I've got either 7 or 8 meetings in 4 days, so it's going to be fun. Part of what's happened is we have, obviously, you got Christmas the week after, so all the meetings that would happen on Christmas week are moved back a week. Mm-hmm. So we got just a jam-packed week. Monday, a meeting that's not one that a lot of people cover because it's not one of the publicly announced, but I've been going to is the pre-planning meeting on Monday morning. And that is the meeting before the meeting. This is where all the city department heads put their heads together and look at the things that are going to be on next month's planning agenda and look for issues or things that need to be resolved before it gets on the actual
this is
agenda.
an opportunity for everybody to give their opinion on these sites.
And everybody,
how it affects each department.
This is power, this is water, this is police, this is public works, this is fire, this is city engineer, planning department.
Anybody that's going to provide a service there gets an opinion. Okay. I wish that some of these would speak up and have a dialogue more. Is this the opportunity that it happens?
This is their opportunity. And you're right. I mean, a lot of, I'll use it for instance. If you're on the police department, you don't want to be seen as you don't want to look like you're having any kind of political influence over a big development. So you don't want to say anything for or against. And I understand that. So you're right. A lot of it is a no comment is what happens. But if there is a big issue, this is their chance. I mean, this is the developers there on each of these projects. So he hears it straight from the department head who can say, for instance, hey, your lot that you're wanting to build this building on doesn't have the proper water capacity or the proper sewer. So this is where they're told that, or they'll say, hey, the sewer line is 3 lots over. You're going to have to pay extra because we got to run extra sewer line. It's going to cost you, that kind of thing. So one thing that was actually announced, I heard it this morning from our city manager on the radio, is that Hampton Inn has finally submitted a site plan to planning. So I don't know for sure. I've not gotten the agenda for pre-planning, but it's possible I'll see that site plan on Monday at pre-planning.
Okay. I believe this first came up September of 2023. So we're about 14 or 15 months into this process.
It's taken a while for this one to come to fruition.
So they're they do have a site plan coming in.
They have submitted a site plan to planning is what was said. And that, like I said, that being the case, it may or may not be on this pre-planning. I don't know. There's also a timeline. You have to get something turned in before it makes it to this meeting. So if it's not at this one, it'll probably be at next month.
Right.
So, but we'll be on the lookout for that. And then whatever else, gets discussed, we'll come back and talk about it next weekend. Because that's the thing. Once it hits pre-planning, it's then public record. So that's how we were able to make like the early announcement on Starbucks, which we'll get to in a second here, because it happened at pre-planning. They put the name of the business and the developer, and then it's public record, and we can talk about it. So Tuesday on the county side, which albeit all this very full schedule there, we've got all 4 of the county committees meeting on the same night, again because of Christmas. So they're going to start at 4:15 with finance. Then at 5:00, they'll go rules, and then law enforcement, and then property. So they'll have 4 meetings back to back to back in the courthouse. I've looked at the agendas. Nothing really stood out on any of them. I think it's mainly going to be monthly reports, I would imagine, because it's a week before Christmas. There'll be one or two people don't even show up. So which happens. And so it's going to should be a quiet night, but I'll be there. You never can tell. Stuff comes out of left field.
So always left field.
Always out of left field. Wednesday, interesting me that I have to be at. This is the City Council and our Shelbyville Power and Water Board are going to meet together at lunchtime on Wednesday at the Rec Center. And this is getting back to that discussion of the word ratepayer. This is about the city charter is what this meeting is about. So I'll be at that. And now that I'm not at the little kids table and can ask questions, I'm hoping I can briefly veer off topic. And I want to know, and I've already had several people ask me, and I don't know the answer to this, and we'd like to find out. If you remember 2 weeks ago at our planning meeting, it was announced that TDEC was going to issue the permit to Shelbyville Power for their water withdrawal for the duck, and not a peep after that. So what happened to that permit is the question. Right. And if I'm allowed to veer off topic, that's a question I'll ask because all the players will be in the room at that meeting. So
good place to find out.
Good place to find out. Yeah. They should have the answers. It's their board. So, and then Thursday, another fairly full evening. We got Thursday evening is BZA, which is Board of Zoning Appeals. Honestly, I've looked at the agenda and I've forgotten what. It's just one item. That's one of those boards that might meet 1 or 2 months. They might not meet for 12 months again because you only depends on what comes up.
Specific. Issues.
And then Planning Commission meets at 6:00. I did get that agenda, and that is the first full agenda that has Starbucks on it. So we announced several weeks ago when it happened at pre-planning, but Starbucks is going in directly next to Doak Funeral Home. They've already combined the lots of the empty property there, and this will be a site plan.
As well?
There's a house there. That house will have to be removed.
Right.
But there is a site plan that will be voted on at this planning commission on Thursday evening. So, in addition to that, there's the normal rezoning stuff. Not a lot of high density on this one, which was surprising. Everybody's taking a month off from that. One item of note, I don't know if we've spoken about it before, but the Shelbyville Housing Authority at the corner of Tate and Elm Street. It's actually called Union there. It's weird how Union and Elm get renamed there. It's at a weird spot. But at that intersection, they own that property that wraps around to that kind of, I guess I'd call it, abandoned gas station on that corner. Yes. So they are looking to get approval, and I can't see why this would be turned down. But they're going to subdivide off the part that's on Elm, get that rezoned as commercial, and sell it as commercial, use the proceeds from that, and the portion on the other side of the Tate Center, which there's another empty piece of land there that's actually on Tate Avenue, that they want to develop into some housing authority housing that I believe is supposed to be targeted at, I don't know if there's an age limit, like 55 and up kind of housing, like senior kind of housing. So, So they're looking to build some senior, which would be, I guess you'd call that senior affordable housing on Tate right there. And part of the way they're going to finance that is by selling the property up on Elm Street, which at some point, hopefully somebody would develop as commercial. So that'll be on the planning agenda. I can't see that any of that's controversial. I would assume it will pass, but we'll see.
All right.
See how the presentations go. And then other than that, let's get into it real quick. Just on the planning side of things, there was a article on the cover of the Bedford Post this week that I've spoken with a number of people on, and I took exception to a little bit. I didn't take exception to a little bit. I took exception to a lot of the article. The implication that I got reading the article was that the Planning Commission does not have the power to say no, is basically the way I read it, if I read correctly. And that was kind of what people got. They posted on their Facebook. It got a decent number of comments on Facebook. And same thing, people were like, it seemed like you couldn't say no. And there was a big issue that was missed in the article, and it's kind of a nuance, but kind of not really a nuance. It's a big thing. During the planning training that I attended a few months ago, anything that happens in the world of the Planning Commission, and a lot of this goes to the council, there's two different kinds of decisions. You have administrative decisions, which, for instance, would be you've got a piece of property, it's already zoned whatever way it needs to be, and you're doing a subdivision, and you just need to meet subdivision regulations. There's no rezoning, there's no annexation. The property's already there. You're the property owner. Say it's zoned R3. There's a list. Then there's how many square feet per residence, how much space has to be between them, setbacks. There's design guidelines. There's all these things you have to meet. It's basically a long checklist.
Right.
So on administrative decisions, it is correct that they can't turn those down if they meet the checklist. Administrative. But there's a whole other set of decisions that start at planning and end up at city council, which are legislative decisions. Legislative decisions are things like rezonings, annexations, acceptance of a PUD, which is a version of a rezoning.
Right.
Those are changing the law on a piece of property. So you've got a large piece of property, whatever it is, say 100 acres, and it's zoned R2. If you want to get that rezoned to, for instance, R4 and put multifamily in, yes, we have a comprehensive plan. We have a future land use. We have some guidelines that we follow, but there's nothing, you're not guaranteed that rezone.
Right.
Now, we can't, the city council has the final say on that. We can't be arbitrary and capricious. We can't just say, I don't like that guy, I'm not going to give him his rezoning.
Right.
Or I don't even, maybe we can't even just say, I don't like that type of development. Right. But if you've got some legitimate reasons.
But here's the thing, Josh. Yeah. The wording came into when you were sworn in.
Yeah.
All these words that you just mentioned are in there that you will not, with prejudice, make decisions. But you will represent the people that your ward to the best of your ability.
Absolutely.
If the people in that ward are adjacent to that property are up in arms about it and not good with it, that's throwing a red flag up.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a red flag, and that's a reason to look at it more carefully. And even legally, from what I'm told, and I'm not a lawyer and don't play one on TV, but the council doesn't have to have a reason, but they're setting themselves up for like a lawsuit or something if they're arbitrary and don't have any reason. But part of the reason can be, the neighbors.
Exactly.
And that's part of the issue I took with that article. It felt like to me the article was almost trying to suppress neighbor turnout at these planning events. And I don't want to suppress neighbor turnout. I want more neighbors showing up. We want people. And even on administrative things, I'll mention a specific project. We had a Brown Lane development, I believe it was last planning, that was administrative. At some point, that one had to be approved. Right. And we had one person show up and speak against it. But even though we knew the final outcome was going to be it had to be approved checklist, I would rather have had 20 people show up to speak against it. So we at least knew that helps the planning commission look deeper into the project, make sure all those boxes are really checked. So I don't want anything that's suppressing, hearing from the public and vote, neighbor turnout. I want more. I wish we had so many people at every meeting that we had to pull them out of this little room that they've got us in, and we have to go back to the rec center because we can't fit everybody every time.
It seems like that article was tilted towards suppressing public
outcry. It felt like it might. So that's why I wanted to speak on it.
Okay, well, you just gave it more exposure than it had originally.
Yeah, I know. Not everybody reads the paper. But I want it because, and it was also posted on Facebook, and a lot of people saw it there. So I just want to give, again, this is my personal opinion. I'm not speaking for the city. I'm not speaking for anybody. This is just Josh Blevins saying what I read into it and how I felt. And I just wanted to let people know that I personally, as one council member, want to see people at these meetings speaking out on issues in their neighborhood and anything that affects them, and, send an email, show up at a meeting, make a phone call, send a text, whatever you need to do to let the council know. Because if you don't, I can't read people's minds.
No.
And unfortunately I spend way too much time on Facebook, but in general, if you make a Facebook comment, that's not enough. Not everybody's going to see that. Right. You need to actually reach out and speak to your elected representatives.
This is the opportunity for the city of Shelbyville, the citizens and taxpayers of Shelbyville, to determine what's best for the city of Shelbyville, the way they want the city of Shelbyville to develop and populate, and how it shifts around from commercial to residential. It's all incumbent upon the people to determine this.
Right.
You guys are merely the conduit to which makes that final decision.
Yeah.
And it's so important, and you hit the nail on the head. The more people that comment to you and show up at these meetings, the better, because
Right.
you have more information to digest and base your decision on.
Yeah, and I'm told by our planning director that this coming year, 2025, we're going to make efforts to clean up some of our subdivision regulations. We're going to make efforts to update our comprehensive plan, updates to zoning regulations. All of that is going to have elements within that where we're going to have specific meetings where we're going to request public feedback. And what happened in the past, I'm told, particularly the comprehensive plan, the only people that showed up to speak about it were developers.
Of course.
Nobody cares until they're building a development next door to you. So as far as the public comments that they had on our current comprehensive plan, it all came from developers because they're the only ones that showed up. All people living in neighborhoods, they didn't care because at that point they didn't have a neighborhood coming in on top of them.
I think that we have seen over the past couple of years, there would be rooms full of people for adjacent neighbors that were being affected.
Right.
But in a couple instances, I saw a representative of the people stand up.
Yeah.
Okay, that were not elected, but they took it upon themselves, and the people that were voicing their opinion said, "Hey, why don't you go speak for us?" And there was a long list of people that they were speaking for.
Yeah.
You know, hundreds of people. These people just signed, and I'm speaking on their behalf.
Right.
I saw that happen. That's an awesome way. Hey, this is 200 people speaking at once here.
Yeah.
That's a way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a petition on that one particular project. Another one you're talking about. And that's a great way to do it because not everybody can get out to a
Right.
6:00 meeting on a weeknight. But if you have one or two representatives come in and speak for you.
Yes, that is a good way to do it
another
because that's
strong way
not 200 people flooding the place, but it
Right.
is.
It
at the
is.
same
Yeah.
time. It isn't physically,
Sure.
but it is there in actuality.
Yeah.
And that's a good way to do it.
Yeah. So overall, I'm optimistic. I think we've got a lot of good things to look forward to, coming up in the next year or so. And I'll be keeping an eye on all of it, getting to as many meetings as I can, hopefully getting over this head cold. So I'm feeling better. And next week we'll be back probably on a Saturday.
On a Saturday.
Friday.
Well,
So-
Josh, you made it through. You
We made
still
it through.
have the strong voice. Sound kind of like Mike Rowe with that deep bass. All right. But thanks for watching, guys. And again, thanks for your hard work, Josh. And again, we congratulate you on your swearing in last night. It's official. You are on city council.
Thank you.
And we appreciate the insight from that position that you'll be bringing to this show. People will get an insight they've never seen before here. And
Yeah,
that's a
yeah, and
good thing.
anything, and I've said this, probably and maybe even publicly, but anything that I'm allowed to speak on, I will. Obviously, there'll be a few
Sure. Yeah.
executive things that they won't let me talk on. I don't want to get my hand slapped, but as much as is public record, we'll keep talking about it every single week.
Transparency is the key. We
Transparency
appreciate
is what
you
we're looking for.
doing what you do. Thanks for watching, everybody. And again, we thank Dennis Young Insurance for allowing us to have this show. And we'll be back next week on